Australia, we've got 40 days to save the country from the mad left. 40 days to save the country from the mad left. That's the fight. When I say the mad left, I'm talking about the lifelong lefty who's pretending to pull a Joe Biden and pretend that he's Captain Middle of the Road. We know he's not. Adam Bandt, the leader of the Greens, who thinks they're about to share power. The mean girl KK, who apparently would be in charge of our borders. Don't get me started on Penny Wong. And Lydia Thorpe. Take a good look at that image, people, because that is the future of the country. You have 40 days to make the case that they don't end up in power. Now, Anthony Albanese thought that he would be able to be Aussie Joe, but not Aussie Joe Bugner, Aussie Joe Biden. He thought that he'd be able to essentially slide his way into office. For the best part of the past 3 years, he's been politically hiding in the basement. Bugger all ideas, and whenever you do hear from him, it's all attack. But the difference between the past couple of years and where we are now is that he's no longer the opposition leader, he's now the alternative Prime Minister. Put simply, think about this as the past 3 years have been the round robin of politics. And he might well have won the minor premiership, but now we're into finals. And Scott Morrison knows how to play finals football. Albo on day one choked. Despite being the bookies' favourite, the media's favourite, and the Twitter god, he stuffed up huge. And if you think it's just my interpretation, let's just have a look around at some of the media coverage today about Albo's worst possible start. On Channel 9, they had to admit it. On The Australian, they reported it. On the Daily Mail, they took 7,000 words to say it, but the one at the bottom matters about going back to the books. You've seen it a million times. Tonight, we will study it like the Zapruder film. The moment when Albo showed us all that his plan for Aussie Joe Biden is not going to work. The alternative Prime Minister is not up for it. The bloke who won the minor premiership is choking at finals football.
It's up to people to ask whatever questions they want. Andrew.
What's the national unemployment rate?
National unemployment rate at the moment is, I think it's 5.4. Sorry, I'm not sure what it is.
As Maxwell Smart said, missed it by that much. The only problem was he missed it by 200,000 people. The unemployment rate, as you know, is at 4%. Lowest equal in decades, but lowest since 2008. The predictions out of the budget is that unemployment as soon as next month could go to a 50-year low of 3.75%. Now, this matters because unlike a loaf of bread or a litre of milk, this is your job. This is what you are in charge of. This is what you are responsible for. And as Peter and Andrew have told you, this is a bloke who was trying to tell us you should vote for him because he did an economics degree at Sydney University, as well as a beginning of a lifelong commitment to far-left politics. Notice how he leaves that bit out of the CV? Well, the Prime Minister, he saw what the problem was here. He didn't lay the boot in about the mistake, but he was able to seize on the doubt that exists in the electorate.
Well, 0.1% is the cash rate. It's been there for some time. In addition to that, the unemployment rate, I'm happy to tell you, was 4% and falling to a 50-year low. And it's come down from 5.7% when we were first elected.
You see, as I have told you, there is doubt about Albanese. 38% of people in recent polls are undecided about whether they like or dislike his leadership style, as opposed to about 17% for Scott Morrison. Labor's plan was to pull a Biden, make it all about Morrison man bad, and slide through to end up taking over the country. Well, thankfully, unlike what the United States had to learn through bitter experience, we can see this fraud up front, a fraud that is choking on the first day of the election. Now, interestingly, again, it's not just my take. What would a veteran political reporter's take be on today?
Chris, is this the worst start to an election campaign you've ever seen?
Yes, Pete, it's bad.
Now, the Labor Party, desperate to try to know that the media will pull a Biden here and cover all scandal to do with the Prime Minister and deflect all reality about their candidate, well, they sent out a rent-a-crowd today to try and have a crack at the Prime Minister, and some media fell for it. Now, I have no doubt that this bloke can't stand Scott Morrison, but it's the detail in the background that tells us it's a rent-a-crowd. You see, the poster that he had today, and no doubt you will see many times during the election campaign, is one that is sold by the Australian Union Movement. So this is not some sort of natural upspring of people who want to paint a sign and have a go at the PM. It's an orchestrated rent-a-mob. Every time you see that sign, it's a rent-a-mob. The best thing about this sign is if you live next door to somebody who has it, you know your neighbour's a dickhead. But of course, all of this adds to the reality of the doubt that's in the market about Albanese. Now, politicians will get things right and get things wrong. It's interesting, though, that Morrison doesn't get a do-over, but of course Albo does. But front and centre, people don't trust Labor with money. And at a time when we have gone through a couple of years where, because of the way that Morrison and Frydenberg managed money, rather than having long COVID hangovers in our economy, we are roaring. Despite the fact that some will try to pretend to tell you that there's a recession around the corner, that's not true. The reality is that people don't trust Albo with money because Albo doesn't trust himself with money. Sure, his own's pretty good. He's got 5 different houses, so you would have thought he would have known the interest rate. After all, that's a lot of houses to own. But more importantly, when he was the Deputy Prime Minister to Kevin Rudd, he could have picked any job in the cabinet. He didn't pick one with money. When he worked for Bill Shorten, he didn't pick one for money. When he worked for Julia Gillard, he didn't pick one for money. He didn't even try to put himself in as a shadow treasurer or shadow finance minister as well as the leader of the party because he doesn't even trust himself with money. So Australia won't. And the reason this particular moment is so brutal is because you don't have to give a stuff about politics to understand everything that this moment has exposed. Is this the end of the road for Albanese? No. It's round 1 of 41. It's a long fight. It's a long grind. The media will, of course, do everything they can to change the subject tomorrow, to pretend that the rent-a-crowds that will pop up are not rent-a-crowds. They'll try to pretend that, they both kind of had a bad day. But tomorrow on FM radio, on Kyle and Jackie O, you know what they're going to be talking about. And it's not going to be Alan Tudge. It's going to be about the bloke who can't remember the unemployment rate. The bloke who got it wrong by 300,000 people. Who has a shadow finance minister who got the budget wrong by $3 billion. Who has a shadow treasurer who says he can't promise that the amount of tax that they plan to take in the next term of government won't be way higher than the current government. And it goes on and on. Don't worry, I've got a whole hour planned for Chris Bowen during this campaign. So let's get to the greatest hits of Albo, the bloke who the media desperately want to get over the line. But here we go. You see, he doesn't have an answer about taxes. He doesn't have an answer about mean girls. He doesn't have an answer when it comes to China. And I promised we would look at this like the Zapruder film. So as you can see, back and to the left of Anthony Albanese is one of the candidates that he wants to get up in Tasmania. Watch him try to stand completely deadly silent, desperately hoping that he would fall out of shot in what will become just as infamous a piece of politics as Gillard's "There will be no carbon tax under a government I lead."
Andrew.
What's the national unemployment rate?
National unemployment rate at the moment is, I think it's 5.4. Sorry, I'm not sure what it is.
And then, of course, there's the answer about taxes that he couldn't give to his mate Carl, who, remember, did that infomercial on 60 Minutes.
Will you increase taxes?
We've said that the tax that we're looking at is multinational tax.
You won't be increasing taxes to pay back debt.
You won't increase taxes.
We have all of our policies out there.
I don't know that you're answering the question. It's pretty.
Yes, I am.
Is it a yes or a no?
I am, absolutely.
Will you be increasing taxes?
We will be announcing our measure on multinational tax evasion.
And remember the bloke who said that we had to walk the talk when it came to workplace bullying? Oh, unless, of course, it's a Labor Party.
OK, then can I broaden that and ask you, is there a cultural problem with senior women within the ALP?
No.
Not that you're aware of?
No. No.
Then, of course, there's the words that he's written himself. Talk about unforced errors. These were ones that he was openly making in front of everyone, which, of course, was when he gave a national security speech. He mentioned climate change more than China, Russia or the Ukraine combined.
Labor will end the climate wars. Climate change is here and its consequences are devastating. Tackle the challenge of climate change. We will act on climate change. Dealing with climate change.
Action on climate change. Climate change. Climate emergency. Climate change on climate change. The implications of climate change to combat climate change. Acting on climate change. Action on climate change.
And remember, again, one of their little moments they thought they could slide through like Sloppy Joe and Kamala did last year, a couple of years ago. Their big plan is to invite the entire world via a UN climate conference should they become the government of this country. So here are the questions that Albo won't answer, and the press won't ask. They were hardly enthusiastic the way they asked the question, particularly about unemployment, trying to bail him out of a great question about interest rates. So Albo, who will pay more tax? Why is climate a bigger threat than China? Who really pays for the 43% climate cut that you want by 2030? Who will be the Defence Minister? Will KK be on the borders or stuffing up the budget? And who's really in charge? The Mean Girls or the Greens?